From Redox and Healthcare Strategy Bullpen, welcome to Diagnosing Healthtech, the show where we talk about healthcare and the technology driving it with the most interesting leaders in the industry.
Good morning from Nashville, Party City. I am coming to you from Nashville, as I said, and I want to welcome our co-host, Sarah Botchin from Redox, who has been in health tech for 15 years. I'm Jeff Englander. I'm the founder and principal of Healthcare Strategy Bullpen. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome Clement Goehrs, MD. He is the CEO and co-founder of Synapse Medicine. And we're going to get right into the interview. So good morning, Clement. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be there.
So tell us a little bit about Synapse, kind of how and why you founded the company.
Yeah, sure. So like you just said, I'm a physician by background. And so I started Synapse almost 7 years ago now, mostly because as a physician, and my co-founder is a physician too, I was just super frustrated with the tool I had to prescribe and to make complex decisions when it comes to prescribing. So we're talking about complex, like 10 drugs on the prescription, very complex patient with a lot of comorbidities. You have to decide what to do, what to adjust, what are the side effects you are trying to prevent. And just the tools we had were not great. Plus, patient safety and medication safety is a huge public health problem, as I think a lot of people are getting aware of, both in Europe, in the US, and that's because it's a very complex topic. And we are fighting huge trends there with people getting older and older, more and more comorbidities, which means more drugs on a typical prescription and more complexity to deal with. And so we said, let's just try to improve that, with better tool. And when I'm saying better tool, and we'll get to that, I'm saying better information. So what to do, what not to do, and better user experience. Because if you're giving an excellent information to a physician, but it's just not easy to understand or easy to access, actually you're not making a great job. So that's what we do at Synapse for the last 7 years. We've been quite successful, so we've been lucky. And now we serve millions of patients across top EHR to improve patient safety and medication safety.
So, for some of the people in the U.S. who may not be as familiar with it, you talk about, you started in Europe, clearly not a Bronx accent there. Now that you're coming to the U.S., a little bit more about what you do and perhaps what are some of the drivers you touched on briefly behind increasing cost and complexity of medication management.
Yes, so that's a great topic. So like you said, we started in Europe, went up market. We are now working with all the top EHR across Europe. And since the last 12 months, we've been starting in the US. We now have live customers there, a team expanding very aggressively on the US market. And we do that because, as you mentioned, there's a number of drivers around improving medication safety and patient safety. And the other trend is that for EHR, it's getting more and more difficult to just keep up with innovation on everything that's happening. And so if you're a typical EHR, you have to innovate on diagnosis and on billing, and then you have to have very good workflow, and there's prescribing, and there's more and more regulatory constraints, and there's so many things you can do. And so we are seeing more and more EHR choosing to not do all of that by themselves, but partnering with top class company, like top of the top leader on each vertical, to say, okay, we are going to partner with Synapse on prescription. We are going to replace the whole clinical decision support and prescribing solution with Synapse. And By doing that, we'll reduce the cost of engineering for now, plus we'll get more and more innovation just now, but over the next years, because as a company, Synapse, we only focus on prescribing. And by only doing that, we can deliver more and more innovations over the next years.
Terrific. And Sarah, did you want to pop in with a question here?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to hear about the commercialization of Synapse and what that was like. So I know that you had to go through a strong clinical trial experience. So 2 years, I think that you mentioned. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, like it's well known that in this industry, everything takes a long time. I think I can definitely relate to that. So in Europe, prescribing and clinical decision support are medical device, software as medical device, which means clinical trials, regulation through the equivalent of the FDA, and just a lot of cost and time associated to that. But still, we've done that. And then once you get your product and you're on the market, then you need to address this market. So basically for us, going to the EHR and starting discussion and integration. And when it comes to integration, we are working, like I said, with small player, which sometimes takes 3 months to just integrate. But we've been working with equivalent of Epic in Europe, like very big EHR serving thousands of providers and millions of patients, and it took us 2 years. And I'm talking 2 years after signing the contract to deploy and all of that. But that just because it's such a sensitive process to change something and to train people, and with prescribing, it just has to work. So if you're switching, you can't fail. You can't say to your provider, "Oh, sorry, I mean, we were switching vendor, so you can't prescribe for 1 day." You can't say that.
Right.
So it has to work. It's super sensitive, and so that's taking a long time. And I think that's one thing we've learned is to plan for that. You need to have the team. You need to have the cash. You need to have the roadmap. You have to plan for the fact that if you want to be in this market and if you have if you want to have big market share, it will take years, and there's no shortcut there.
So just to kind of re-articulate that, because that is so fascinating to me. 2 years to go through the clinical trial experience, then you entered into the small market, and those were relatively quick, I guess, compared to the moving up market, and then a 2-year implementation after that.
Yeah.
For me, the thing that brings to mind is, you're solving a really big problem, but a lot of people feel like, or wonder, like, how has that not been solved by the EHRs themselves? Can you maybe explain what the deficiencies are if you're thinking about what your providers are lacking?
So this is a great question that I get a lot. So obviously, any kind of modern EHR or some kind of clinical decision support and some kind of medication alerts on either side effect or data iterations. There's those type of things everywhere since the last 20 years. But like we said, in the same time, we have this huge public health problem and patient safety problem. So, I mean, something is clearly not working. And so if you ask the providers and the end user about, okay, you have your EHR, and are you using clinical decision support, and do you like it, and are you looking at all the alerts? Most of the time they will tell you, oh no, that's not useful, I'm just not looking at that. And that's the main problem. Sometimes it's because the information, like the medical information, is not relevant, but most of the time it's a user experience problem. Let's take a very classic situation. I'm a physician. My patient has 15 drugs, like diabetes, a lot of comorbidities. I want to switch one drugs. I'm going there. There's a good chance my EHR is showing me 50 alerts. 50, something is wrong. Do I have the time to look at those 50 alerts? I mean, absolutely not. I'm working full day. I don't have this time. What I want to know as a physician is what is really important, and more than that, okay, why should I do? Not just the alerts. And so that's one of the things we provide at Synapse. Number one, just working a lot on UX, so user experience and UI, to not showing a list of alerts, but like visual things saying, okay, those are the important information you should get. And then number two, telling you what to do. So for information, okay, for instance, okay, there is one drug-drug interaction. We're telling you, okay, maybe you should divide the dose of this drug by 6, and that will help not getting this drug-drug interaction. And that's the kind of actionable things that I think users are looking for.
Yeah.
Clement, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
Clement, can you talk more about, when we were prepping for this, you were talking about different things you're doing to bring better UI and UX, and how you were trying to work with users to get that. And I think that's a really important point. So can you talk more about what you're doing on that end?
So what I learned over the last 7 years is there's no shortcut there too. You just have to sit with your user. And I mean, let's say you want to develop a new feature. You have to do the playbook that everyone knows the playbook, but not a lot of people actually apply the playbook of, okay, you should design your software with your user. And so we just do a lot of workshop and a lot of work session with physician, and we make sure we have young physician and older physician, and we make sure we have physician using several type of EHR. So we have like very representative things, because one of the things we've seen a lot of competitor does is design the tool for 25 years old physician. That's great, but those are not the people inside our system. A lot of physicians are not that good with technology sometimes, and so you have to design the tool for that. And then when you are on the market, just being able to iterate a lot on your product. And so we are making change in production every single week. Like for the last 7 years, we haven't missed a week. So every single week, we try to improve a number of things inside the product, which is very hard to do if you are a medical device, because changing things is just, but just continuous iteration like that, iteration on the product, I think is the key success to, at the end of the day, having a great end user experience.
So you mentioned changing the product over every week, but what is it about the way you're doing that and the way you're bringing users in that's not overwhelming them? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So first, maybe to be super explicit about exactly how the product works. So we are offering those components. So it's not just like API, it's actually like a component. So you get the API plus a piece of UI, and we plug that inside the EHR. But for the end user, the integration is so smooth because there's a lot of customization that the EHR can make, that the end user is not knowing that actually there's several components from Synapse inside the EHR. So number one, once again, I'm a physician. I'm starting a prescription. I'm still using my EHR. I'm seeing those components, telling me what to do, what not to do. Those are Synapse components, but I don't know. I don't know it's Synapse. Then when it comes to changing things while not breaking user experience, well, we have a number of level of change. We have like minor change where we just do them because we know it's not going to break the whole experience. We have medium one, and we have what we call major or breaking change that we want to push because we know it's going to be better, but we know it's a global change or major one. And when we do that, we plan months in advance. We make sure we communicate the change that are going to happen to the provider. we make sure we have materials to train the physician to say, okay, those are the things that changed. That was that in the past. You can use that way. So it's just a lot of change management and making sure you're not pushing a new version of your software on a Wednesday or Friday and letting everyone discover by themselves how to use that.
Right. That makes sense. Sarah, did you have a question?
Definitely. So I'm just, thinking about the user experience. There are just so many unique factors when you're thinking about healthcare and EHRs in general. So there's the patient safety component and getting all the right data, but there's also, the limitations that EHRs present. I'm just curious to understand how you've handled those barriers, maybe what existed for you as you are trying to surface these, alerts in front of your providers. And if you could describe that, that'd be really helpful.
Yeah. That's a good question too. So you're totally true. I mean, our product is I think we have like 5 or 6 different types of certification and regulation for our product. So we can do exactly what we want. There's a limit to what we can build. There's a number of features that should be there, even if we think it's not useful, a number of things we can do. So we always start with that, knowing what should be inside the product. And then after that, we apply the UX in order to something that need to be there, but are actually not relevant, trying to make them very small or something like that, And then there's something I should tell, which is every single integration within EHR is different. I would love, as the CEO of this business, to tell you, yes, we have nailed it. It's a clear process. Every single one is the same. It's not true. It's just 80% is the same. Maybe for very small EHR, it's mostly routine. But every medium to major EHR integration, there's some very legacy things they've been doing. Some workflow typical from this EHR that you have to learn by working with your partner, making sure you're asking all the questions, double checking those questions. And then once again, when you are going to start testing, you have to adapt because these things have to work. The workflow has to be great. And to my experience, you just can't plan for absolutely everything. You can hopefully plan for a lot of things, but then you will discover things by just integrate and going in production.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I know that you've more recently moved into the US. I'm interested to learn what was similar, or maybe what experiences did you take from your EU deployment now that you're deploying and selling into health systems in the US?
So that may surprise you, but I'm finding the US market easier than Europe.
That surprises me.
Yes. Because number one, actually less regulation, a little bit less. Being a medical device is a lot of regulation. Software in the US, actually for EHR and prescribing, is not a medical device yet. And I think that's one interesting trend is that the FDA, especially with AI and especially with everything that's happening, has been pushing more and more slowly into the fact that maybe someday, soon, they will start to regulate and this market and see those advanced clinical decision support system as medical device. Right now, they saw that as an exemption. So that's one thing that is a little bit different, but I think moving in the same direction. All the other things I would say are quite similar. Big EHR, huge need to innovate. A lot of things have been changing with artificial intelligence and all of that. And so the market is evolving faster than in the last 20 years. And so a number of big players are looking for a way to differentiate themselves. And so for us, we've been learning a lot how to how to communicate our value proposition to both a small digital health company building his EHR and a very large one. And we've learned that it's not the same value proposition. A small EHR wants to launch fast and don't have a lot of resources. And so they are working with us because they are seeing an opportunity to save on resources on prescription and clinical decision support. A large EHR, I mean, they have a lot of resources, and most of the time, they will want to be more innovative, make strategic move for competitive reason, and it will be more about the future and making sure to stay on the market over the next 5 and 10 years than really like saving on resources. And so those trends are the same in the US and in Europe. And last, I will say that artificial intelligence is just making things very interesting in both regions and probably moving a little bit faster in the US. And that's why I think we've been looking into.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. I mean, right now we're seeing digital transformation being one of the primary drivers of budget for health systems. So they're still spending on things that they would consider, revolutionizing their platforms. I mean, we're a long way from maybe being fully revolutionized, but I would, say, and we've seen some articles lately come out, talking about automation and some of the sort of classic burnout related expenditures still being top tier, but AI, following very quickly in the next coming years, really exploding. Are you seeing health systems gear up for that as you're talking with them? Are you seeing success given those trends? How has that impacted you all?
So I think, my background, I'm a physician, but my background is in biomedical informatics and AI too. So I've been looking at these trends before it was even sexy, and it's been like that, at first, and then no one was talking about AI, and now again. Looking above the hype, I think for years, there was a lot of things that could be done with artificial intelligence, but it was difficult to implement because that meant having very good data and huge transformation, all of that. And so, like you just said, it was nice, but I mean, the health system were not there. They had so much to do. Over the last year, those technology have come to such an excellent point in terms of easy to deploy, easy to use, and return on the investment the next day or week, then adoption is I think, like that. Because there are actually things that are working. And I think, once again, there's a lot of hype around, you can describe your patient and GPT-4 will tell you what to do. I mean, no health system is going to let anyone let GPT-4 tell what to do with the patient.
Yeah.
But other things like Epic has been doing about drafting answers, drafting a number of things, maybe a lot of structure information, that's perfectly safe to do. That's working. And that has the potential to save hours a day to nurses and providers.
Let me step back to something you said before, and actually even going back to your first comment, you said it took you 2 years to get through the clinical trials and nothing is fast. So if you were to go back to that point in time, what are some of the things you would like to know or would have liked to know then that you know now and that you could impart to other people in terms of selling into the market? And what are maybe some things that the people you were selling to could have helped you to know to improve the process?
So maybe I'm going to tell hard truth to a lot of startups, but I have not seen real success and real money for anything that is just nice to have.
Yeah.
People are only paying for things that are absolutely needed. And it's easy to be fooled by paid pilots or innovative things. But at the end of the day, if what you're bringing to the market is not absolutely, there's not like an absolutely necessity inside the workflow and a very good integration inside the workflow, it's going to be difficult to get paid for that. And so, I mean, at first, we tried like a lot of innovative business model saying, I mean, we're saving so much money for those people and those people, let's capture a little bit of that and all of that. Nothing worked. And at the end of the day, the way we are making money are through classic business model, which were there for a long time. And we're just like more efficient and we have a better product and replacing legacy player. And so I think that's one major takeaway, is that healthcare is so difficult to change that you can't change everything at the same time. You either like coming inside a classic business model with a better product and a better, more efficient process, but changing the business model are another thing and very difficult to do.
Let me ask one more, and then Sarah, I'll let you ask perhaps a closing question. You have mentioned consistently the importance of taking into account and making things easy to work within the workflow. And you gave us an example when we're getting ready of a company that didn't do that. So how are there other ways that people should think about this, or are there other things you mentioned bringing in the end users? Are there other things that you would suggest people do, or have we covered those all?
Basically, but we have the most success in deployment and great story when we made sure to involve all the stakeholders during the process. And I mean, during the buying process and deployment process. And we've lost a ton of time when we try to shortcut that and to just talk to, I don't know, the CTO plus one people, and you think, okay, those people are decision makers, that's okay. So everyone should be involved. Let's sign the contract and deploy. We've done that. Then you go to deployment phase, and I don't know, people who are not involved in the buying and decision making, and now you have to redo the whole thing and convince it. So it's better to take a little more time at first, make sure you get all the information, you get all the stakeholders involved, including the end user, and then you're just saving a lot of time for after and making sure everyone is happy. So sorry, that's another answer about it takes a long time and there's no shortcut. But that's really my learning from 7 years in this industry. It's you can speed up a lot of things. Obviously, you can put pressure, you can be very intense and all those things, but still, there's no overnight success.
Yeah, no, it does sound like, one of the things is, that we've learned and that we've done in our experience as well is bringing in all the stakeholders early on to have them both evaluate the product and the workflow makes it a quicker, I don't want to say quick, but quicker sale and makes it a more fruitful sale. If I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to say at Redax, we've actually launched training on how to sell to health systems. It's one of the components where we talk about all the different stakeholders, making sure that they're involved, just because there's so many blockers that you can hit along the way. I think your story is really inspiring. It's really neat to meet someone who had a problem in your real world and life, and you created a solution for it. It feels like, and it's obvious that you're uniquely capable of doing the work that you do with, your physician background, but also you're an informaticist. we see a lot of physicians trying to create products like you have done, and there are a lot of barriers for them. I would be curious, just from your perspective, what allowed you to be successful, and what advice would you give, your fellow physicians wanting to make a change in healthcare?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. It was very difficult at first, very difficult, because especially in Europe, 7 years ago, it was not very well seen to start a company as a physician. I was working inside the hospital at the time. I was like, oh, you want to do a startup? Okay, just quit your job and do that. But we will never re-employ you. I mean, if you leave. So I would say, actually, I need to answer you with a story. A few months ago, I was talking to a very well-known venture capitalist, which has been investing inside digital health for the last 6 to 7 years, and not before that. And so I asked her, okay, what did you learn in the last 6 to 7 years that surprised you? And she told me, okay, so we've done a number of investments in digital health, and no, we only invest in funders that have irrational motivation for starting those business, because all the other ones just quit after 2 years. So I would just say, if you want to start something in this business, make sure you really want to do that and you're absolutely passionate about this topic. I started this company not knowing what a startup was. I didn't say I'm going to start a startup. I was like, I just love this complex problem, and I think I want to spend time on that. And I think that's where you should start. And if you are truly passionate about that and just keep working on it, eventually you'll get somewhere.
Yeah, I think just one point, sir. I think that the roller coaster nature of a startup and having incredible resilience. What did Elon Musk say? It's like chewing glass. Yeah, it's really incredible. And so, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I mean, I love that story. Thank you so much for sharing. And thank you for being here today. We've appreciated the time.
My pleasure.
We've learned quite a bit. And, we're thankful that you're able to share your journey with the folks that are listening in today.
Thank you.
So let me go on to today's quick take. So a couple of different things. There was an article called Roundups on 16 recent strategic digital health partnerships. We'll just hit on a couple of them, but very interesting article. In particular, Best Buy and Geisinger started a partnership to scale chronic care and help them systems design chronic care management. GE Healthcare and Mass General Brigham also had a partnership for collaboration of an AI algorithm for scheduling productivity, and Bicycle Health and Albertsons partnered for buprenorphine prescriptions in 17 states. Next article was Amazon was considering a new subscription plan for healthcare and grocery services and a potential one medical integration with Prime. We talked about this a little bit last week. Amazon, a standalone subscription programs in grocery and in healthcare. Also thinking about adding one medical subscription to Prime. On Prime Day, they did have a discount of about 30%. The company is hoping to launch these new services by year end. Whoops, excuse me, it just went right through my notes, so bear with me a second. Also, there is a story about navigating the reimbursement landscape in the digital health era. It's talking about how digital health has moved from shifted patient care from a facility to a focus on preventive care, specialty care, and chronic disease management. You have to know the coding landscape, particularly as you get new coding around remote patient monitoring, chronic care management, and also identifying the appropriate coding and reimbursement strategies to generate clinical and economic evidence to improve clinical innovation. And there was also the 2023 Healthcare Provider IT Report, Doubling Down on Innovation. This was a follow-on report from Bain, and talking about approximately 80% of healthcare executives report increased spending on a year-over-year basis. This is due to new technology spending, labor shortages, and supply cost pressures. Talking with a healthcare CEO yesterday, saying that this is probably going to continue for the next 3 to 5 years. And he was talking about the increased margin pressure that the industry is going to have, and he classified this as have to make investments. In particular, he also mentioned that revenue cycle management and workflow optimization were the top spends, with patient engagement getting an increasing share. And then the last but not least, the state of healthcare employee experience in 2023, continued pressure on employee workforce challenges at a conference down here in Nashville. And probably the top issue coming up is how to help the clinicians navigate the workforce pressures and how to take them out of their heads in the EMR. Very interesting article. So I think that continue to see workforce pressures for a number of years on clinical staff.
Awesome. So I'll jump on in here. We have 2 interesting articles to talk about in a little bit more depth. The first is that Achilles ended up cutting their workforce another 40%, pivoting to selling digital therapeutics over the counter. So for a little bit more on this, they announced Wednesday that they plan to shift to a non-prescription OTC model for their digital therapeutics, which has focused on providing treatment for children and adults with attention deficit disorder, or ADHD. The shift is expected to reduce Achilles' operating expenses, improve their margins, and make its digital applications more accessible to people that need them. Jeff, I'd be curious to hear your take on this.
We wrote a blog on this about payer and pain management. Payer obviously filing for bankruptcy. I think Achilles also in digital therapeutics having issues. A couple of lessons here. One is that, make sure you get the reimbursement and figure out where reimbursement's coming from almost first. And I don't think a lot of people in the digital therapeutics market kind of figured that out. I think that is, obviously part of the reason why Pair went under. They did have an FDA approved, 2 FDA approved products. They actually even got patients. It was just figuring out the reimbursement, and they had trouble bringing the payers along. I think Achilles is having the same issues. I think they're going to have a tough time moving over the counter. People do have a hesitancy to pay for things, particularly when they expect insurance, healthcare insurance, to pay for this. I understand why they're doing it. I think that could be some tough sledding.
Yeah, it sounds like they're seeing some positive feedback, but the intention behind the layoff is to reduce their operating expenses, it sounds like, and to have a bit more straightforward of a commercialization for their product. But definitely an interesting move, and one that we'll be watching to see how they do.
Yeah, you do see this. You saw this, I think, about 10 years ago with mental health, and it had a difficult time getting traction as well. Obviously, you see it coming back around, tremendous traction. Now, as you get insurers, willing to pay for it, you're getting closer and closer to true mental health parity. Obviously, as mental health has taken off during COVID, I think having the digital therapeutics lay more groundwork in getting proper reimbursement, will be helpful. I do think the products have tremendous potential and, do solve a real problem. It's kind of solving the reimbursement puzzle will, I think, be what makes them really move forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of data that shows that the gamification of, the healthcare experiences proven results with patients, but obviously someone has to pay for it.
Yeah.
Cool. So the second article is that now we see that 1/4 of the U.S. healthcare visits are delivered by non-physicians. So from 2013 to 2019, the share of U.S. healthcare visits delivered by non-physicians, such as nurse practitioners, physician assistants, increased from 14 to 26%. So it's a pretty rapid shift. Would love to hear your take on that, Jeff.
We all know and hear consistently about both the shortage of physicians and, other clinicians. I think as a country, we're generally used to, seeing a physician, but, especially particularly with specialists, I had to wait 6 months to get in to see a GI doc. We're going to have to get used to, and we're going to increasingly see non-physicians, and I think that will be a good thing that's the way to solve the one-to-many problem, and it will also get physicians practicing at the higher level of their license, and you will see more and more care delivered that way. Also, I think as care moves out of the hospital consistently, you will see just kind of check-ins with other people in the office. PAs, RNs, others. And, that's a trend that I think is here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Even in the conversation we had today and others that we've had, there are a lot of different ways for providers to be more efficient and automating their experience, allowing them to operate at the top of their license. So we think about decision support, AI, but even just in general, there's a lot of care that other support staff can perform. But I think one of the things that was interesting about this article to me that resonated is a lot of it is about like figuring out what the construction of the care team should be. So who actually does what work? What is important for a PA to do versus a provider? And it just kind of, it makes me think of a care experience I had recently. So I went to see a specialist, a podiatrist, for this foot thing that I had going on. And my PCP said, well, you've got this inflamed nerve and we're going to have to, you're going to have to maybe go and have some surgery to deal with it. And of course, I'm freaking out as a patient. I go see the podiatrist and he smiles and he says, well, this is commonly misdiagnosed. You've just overused it a little bit, take some ibuprofen and, come to me when you have foot issues in the future. And so, there's nothing wrong with, certain care being held within the walls of primary care, but knowing when to apply what kind of care and, allowing the right users to tap in when it's appropriate, I think is the message that I take home here.
Yeah, and one other thing I will say is I think as healthcare evolves and gets more like other goods we purchase, where it's available where we want it, when we want it, you will see other caregivers, move more into the mix. And as you say, you'll start to learn, when you need to move into kind of being your own advocate and getting more specialist care. But I do think, that's definitely changing.
Right.
So let me, just wrap up the show. We'll see if are there any questions. I don't see any questions in the comments, but we do encourage you all to ask questions. So please, if there are any questions, please feel free to, send them in. Please think of, some great questions for next week. I'll go ahead and wrap up. As I said, I'm the founder and principal of a firm called Healthcare Strategy Bullpen. A way to think of us as kind of the Rosetta Stone between healthcare and technology. We help bridge the gap between the language and culture of technology and healthcare, and how to apply technology to solve health problems that we have now. And this week's blog will be on applying AI to radiology. Next week's guest is going to be Gary Cow. He's a former Chief Data Analytics Officer at Akron Children's Hospital, and he'll be talking about positioning your data analytics team for success. So we hope you'll all be able to join us next week with Gary. And with that, I will turn it over to you to close out the show, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone, you can click the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen to get weekly invites to the show. You can also email us and ask any questions you might have, suggest topics, guest ideas, or anything else you might think of. The show is sponsored, in addition to Health Strategy Bullpen, by Redox, the leading healthcare integration platform that specializes in the implementation of big data, AI, and cloud computing. Be sure to join us again at the same time next week for a new episode. And we also have another event that's taking place later today at 2 p.m. Eastern, where we're going to be hosting a Tech Talk webinar that is all about building out a FHIR data store so that you can create a competitive advantage in the future of healthcare. We really enjoyed having you here today. Thanks for listening.